Once upon a time there lived an old man and an old woman in a small house on the edge of the forest. Everything in their life was arguing, only one thing was missing: the old man and the old woman did not have children. Once the old man asked to bake a gingerbread in the shape of a little man. The old woman looked into the barn, and there was almost no flour left. She took a bowl, scrubbed it along the box, swept it along the bottom, and a handful of 2 handfuls of flour gathered. The old woman kneaded the dough with sour cream, and when she was rolling out a gingerbread on the table, she took it and made it in the shape of a little man with arms, legs, with a head, and put it in the oven. After a while, the old woman came up to see if the gingerbread was baked, took it and put it on the window to cool. The gingerbread man cooled down, lay down, but suddenly got up and ran as fast as possible out of the house, from the window to the bench, from the bench to the floor, across the floor and to the doors, jumped over the threshold to the porch, from the porch to the courtyard, from the courtyard to the gate, farther and farther. The old woman called her husband, and they both rushed after him. But it's not so easy to catch the gingerbread man. Now, he has already reached the field where the peasants were threshing their crops. Running past, the gingerbread man shouted at them that he had already run away from the old woman and the old man, and he would easily run away from them too. The peasants heard this and ran after him. But no matter how fast they ran, they could not catch up with him. A gingerbread man ran up to the field where the mowers were mowing the grass. Running past, he shouted to them that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and he would easily run away from them too. The mows could not stand such ridicule. Everyone rushed after the gingerbread man. They run as fast as they can, but they cannot catch up. And towards the little man the cow is walking, he shouted to her that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and he would easily run away from her too. The cow got angry, and also rushed after the gingerbread man. Only he cannot catch up. And to meet him a pig. The little man shouted that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and he would easily run away from her too. A pig screeched and ran after. Only she could not catch up, she was too fat. A gingerbread man runs along the road, and a hare meets him. The little man said that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and he would easily run away from him too. The hare heard this and ran after him. Nor can he catch up with the little man, only the hare saw him. A gingerbread man runs, and a wolf meets him. "I will eat you," says. And the little man answered him that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and he would easily run away from him too. The wolf growled and rushed at the gingerbread man, and he dodged and ran as fast as he could. Only the wolf saw him. A gingerbread man is running, and a huge bear is meeting him. His little man was not afraid, but shouted that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and from the wolf, and he would easily run away from him too. A ferocious bear stamped his foot and ran after him. But the bear was too slow to catch up with the fast gingerbread man. A gingerbread man runs, and a fox meets him. The fox was very cunning, but the little man did not know this. Therefore, out of habit, he began to shout that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and from the wolf, and from the bear, which means he will easily run away from her too. The fox listened to the end, and said that she was very old, did not hear anything.
Okay.
She came closer to the little man and asked him to repeat it. Obeyed her silly gingerbread man and began to brag again. The fox listened to the end and said that she still did not hear anything. She came even closer to the little man and asked him to repeat it again. The gingerbread man agreed, and then only he started anew when the fox pounced on him and ate it. And the gingerbread man no longer bragged about. Once upon a time there was a little, nice girl. She was sweet to everyone who only saw her. But she was the loveliest and dearest of all to her grandmother, who did not even know what to give her beloved granddaughter. Once she gave her a red velvet hat. And since this hat was very suitable for her, and she did not want to wear anything else, they began to call her Little Red Riding Hood. Once her mother asked to take a piece of cake and a bottle of wine to her grandmother. They say that she is both sick and weak, it will be good for her. She ordered my mother not to run away from the road, otherwise she would fall and break the bottle, and then grandmother would get nothing. And when she comes to her grandmother, so that she does not forget to say hello to her. Little Red Riding Hood obeyed, took the presents and set off. And my grandmother lived already behind the forest, half an hour walk from the village. And as soon as Little Red Riding Hood entered the forest, she met a wolf. The girl, however, did not know what kind of fierce beast it was, and was not in the least afraid of him. She greeted politely. The wolf also behaved very decently, so Little Red Riding Hood told the wolf that she was bringing gifts to her beloved grandmother. And while she was telling how to get to her grandmother's house, the wolf thought to himself how he could eat not only the old woman, but also a pretty girl. And then the wolf thought of showing Little Red Riding Hood a huge meadow with beautiful flowers. Little Red Riding Hood, as she looked at the many wonderful flowers, thought that it would be nice to bring grandmother a fresh bunch of flowers, because that would also please her. Yes, and ran away from the road to the side, and began to collect flowers. Slightly picking one flower, as the other beckons her, it is even better, and she will run after that. And so it went further and further into the depths of the forest. And the wolf ran straight to grandmother's house and knocked on the door. Grandma asked who was there. And the wolf replied in a thin voice that it was Little Red Riding Hood who brought the pie and wine. The old woman believed and ordered to press on the latch and enter. The wolf pressed the latch, the door flew open, and he ran to his grandmother's hut. He rushed to grandmother's bed and swallowed it at once. Then he put on his grandmother's dress and her cap on her head, went to bed and waited. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood ran and ran after flowers, and when she collected as many of them as she could carry, then she again remembered about her grandmother and went to her house. She was very surprised that the door was wide open, and when she entered the room, she called out to her grandmother. There was no answer. The granddaughter came up to the bed and saw grandmother was lying, and she had pulled her cap on her very nose, and it seemed so strange. Little Red Riding Hood asked with bewilderment why grandmother had such big ears. And the wolf answered in a grandmother's voice to hear better. Then Little Red Riding Hood asked why grandmother had such big eyes. To better see you, the wolf answered. And the arms are so big that it is easier to grip. And when Little Red Riding Hood saw the wolf's mouth and only asked why grandmother had such a nasty big mouth, the wolf pounced on her, screaming, "So I could eat you!" And how he jumped out from under the blanket and swallowed the poor girl. Having had enough in this way, the wolf again went to bed, fell asleep, and began to snore as much as he could. At that time a hunter was passing by the grandmother's house, heard snoring and wondered if something had happened to the old woman that she snored so. He entered the house, went to the bed and saw that the wolf was sleeping there. And he has been hunting this villain for a long time. He wanted to kill him with a gun, but it occurred to him that the wolf, perhaps, swallowed his grandmother and that she could still be saved. That is why he did not shoot, but opened his wolf's mouth wide, and saw a red cap flashed there. A girl jumped out of her mouth and said that her grandmother was still there. The hunter opened his wolf's mouth even wider, and the old grandmother somehow managed to get out behind the Red Riding Hood. They were delighted, began to hug and thank the hunter. They decided to teach a cunning wolf a lesson. They brought up large stones as soon as possible, stuffed them into the wolf's mouth and belly, and carried him out into the yard. And when the wolf woke up, he saw the hunter, and was about to escape, but could not bear the weight of the stones, and fell to the ground. This delighted all three, while the wolf got up and barely dragged its heavy belly into the dark forest. They never saw him again. This is how they taught the cunning wolf a lesson, and Little Red Riding Hood decided that she would never again disobey Mother's orders.